back. Welcome to No Sympathy for Kings, a rich man's podcast. I am your host, Ian, and today I have a very special guest here with me today. No stranger to my previous platform, Cigar Talk Network, but brand new to this audience, No Sympathy for Kings. So this is a very dear friend of mine. We go back to kindergarten. Very accomplished woman. She's a 11-time best-selling author, a coach of aspiring coaches, also a book writing coach, an NLP practitioner, and has her doctorate in education. Without further ado, Dr. Nicolya Williams. How are you today?
I am great. And I just want to say that introduction just melted my heart because I come on to podcasts and things like that all the time. People always ask me to give them an introduction, and that always feels so insincere. And the fact that you just did that, and I didn't even know that you were doing it, and you know that, that's so dope. So I'm doing good and just honored as always to be here.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, like you can't be lazy about this. Like you gotta know like your subject and who you're interviewing and stuff. And yeah, it's like if you're taking the time to come on my platform, of course I'm gonna give you your due. So you're here today because I want to talk about your entrepreneurial journey because it's a very rich one and very interesting. So tell me about your business, like high level overview with what you do.
It's funny. I love this story. And the only reason I love it is because I remember being in this season and being like, this is the worst thing I've ever had to go through. Like, how could this ever be working out for my favor? Like, how could this be working for my good? Like, this is a mess. But a few years ago, I went through a very trying season where I went through a divorce. And anyone who has been through any kind of transition in their life, whether it is grief, whether it is a divorce, whether it is your kids transitioning and moving on to college or adulthood, whatever, like transitions are hard because transitions make you question a lot about like your security and who you are. And so for me, what kept coming up is, who is Nicolya without these titles, right? And so what I decided to do is I decided to join a single moms group at my local church. And while joining this, they had asked me to be a table lead. And with that responsibility came that I just like facilitated these different discussions. And I remember one day, one of the women, actually all the women at the table asking me like, how are you balancing all of the things you're balancing? And for me, in this season, I was working a full-time job, working a part-time job, raising, two children and getting my doctorate full-time. And so I'm sharing these like little strategies that I think are like simple no-brainers that they're like blown away by. And, they come in week after week and they're like, oh my gosh, this is so amazing. This is so helpful. This is so supportive. So I decided I wanted to write an ebook. Long story short, as I wrote this ebook, I kept thinking like, if they could be blessed by it, why can't more people learn about this? So I decided to publish. And I'll be honest, that was the scariest thing I ever did because I just made the decision essentially overnight and was like, all right, I'm just going to try it. Like, what do I have to lose type of thing? And long story short, after publishing, people started to come to me and ask me about like, how do you publish? How do you write a book? And I started to coach people on writing a book. And it was such a like natural transition for me because I have a background. I apologize. It should have turned off I thought I turned it off. Apologize.
You're fine.
It's such a natural transition for me because I have a background in counseling and I already have the desire and the passion to help people. And so I went from counseling to coaching. And so I always say like my business was literally birthed by accident. Like I didn't prepare to start this journey. And then I'm sure we'll talk, throughout this interview, how it continued to transition and change throughout time. But that's where I started it. That's where I started this entrepreneurial journey.
Okay, great. So why did you land? Well, I understand like the story of the women's health group and everything, but what made you want to like be a coach? And I know you're very specific to women, especially with elevating them and getting them on the way and providing them the tools and the insights and the guidance that they need to get themselves up off the ground. Like, what made you like focus in on that particular sector?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. So as much as I love counseling, and there was even like, I remember telling my family like, okay, I think I'm going to go into this coaching thing. And they're like, are you crazy? Like you have years of debt and years of, time that you put in to becoming a counselor and you want to become some like random coach. What got me into coaching is because there are not as many regulations. And I say this lightly because there because there's not a lot of regulations, that can be a great thing, right? But it could also be a really dangerous thing. And I know the
Hmm.
coaching space is really working to be more regulated, and that's one of the things that I do now as a coach is help to support coaches and certify coaches. But I liked that the coaching field did not have so many rules, red tape, and restrictions, if that makes sense. It freed me to really be me, my authentic version of myself, not this like structured um, version of myself. If that's the best way I can explain it.
Okay, so for you, it was kind of like a break from like what you were doing because I know you pretty well, and I know like there is like a purpose and a time for basically everything you do. Okay, it's very regimented, you know, and that's a compliment, you know. Like there are times when I wish I could be more regimented, but some of us prefer chaos. We operate better in organized chaos. But yeah, okay, I can see. So it was almost like a form of escapism in a way.
It was so it they counseling and coaching have they're very parallel. There's a lot of tools that I use for my counseling background in coaching, but there's a little bit more freedom around it. And especially when it's your own business, you structure it and build it the way that you want. So it created that freedom and that escapism from it needing to look a certain way.
Hmm. And what year did you start this journey? We're in 2022 now. When did you begin?
Ooh. Okay, so let me think. All right. So it's weird. My business, technically, it's interesting. I wouldn't call it a business. I started a counseling blog in 2016, just sharing counseling strategies, right? And it was my way. It's funny, I don't consider myself a strong writer, but the more I look back, I'm like, man, I've kind of always been a writer. So I started a blog in 2016. 2017 is when I published my first book. 2018 is when I really built it into a business. So I typically count my business as 2018 because in 2016 and 2017 I was just using writing as a creative expression. I wasn't using it with the idea of like I'm going to go register for an LLC and bill people and make money off of it.
Hmm. It was an outlet for you, just
Exactly.
where you were in life at that time.
Exactly.
Got it. Got it. I don't want to gloss over your educational journey because you've been in school like since pretty much since I known you,
Oh yeah.
like 30 years or so.
Oh
Yeah. So initially, of course, you have your doctorate in education, and because I'm assuming like that was like your big get, you know, in life, and eventually you discovered like through this journey of yours personally and educationally that this could be parlayed into something, I guess, just kind of for you, you know, not to say that what you were doing wasn't for you necessarily, but this to me like feels more personal. You know, it's not just like a career path necessarily, it's almost like a calling. So like what, I guess, what in your educational journey do you think like lent to this like this 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 particular leg, or this, you know, I guess offshoot, if you will, of the entrepreneurial journey?
yeah. So I don't mean to make this about trauma, but it's so funny as you started to answer the question, ask the question. I was like, golly, I'm gonna have to share something I've never shared publicly before. um, but
your
so
your your choice.
no, and I'm comfortable with it. I wouldn't even have said that if I wasn't comfortable. But you guys heard it here first. But no, seriously. So growing up, my biological father was in prison. My mom was highly educated. My mom had me in high school, and she went on to college and law school, and I witnessed her journey of education. And later in life, first off, I witnessed her journey and I feel like I valued education. Like I remember one of my earliest Christmas gifts, we didn't have a lot of money, but I remember this like lit me up, right? My grandfather got me a stack of scrap paper and a highlighter, and that lit me up because that means I could sit on the floor with my mom when she was in law school and highlight like what she was highlighting. Like I felt like such an adult. I remember going to law school classes with my mom, like all the things. But long story short, later in life, my mom got married, and her ex-husband now was extremely verbally abusive. And one of the things he told me is like, oh, if your biological father is in prison, then it's in your blood to go to prison. And so I had this weird obsession that like somehow that was the only outcome for me. And so I worked really, really hard to like circumvent anything to do with that. And part of that caused almost like achievement addiction, if that makes sense, where I dug my heels into what is the achievement or accomplishment that I could make to prove that I'm not that. And it's the weirdest thing. My achievement addiction was never public. Like I actually, true story, when I got my second master's degree, no one even knew I was getting my master's degree. Like it was never like publicized. I never shared it on, online. I never shared any of that. It was always for me, but it never felt like something good enough. So if I could be very honest, after I got my second master's degree, I'm like, oh, I'm done with school. Like I don't need to do this. But I have a deep desire to learn. Most of my friends will call me a nerd, and I embrace it. Like I am a person that wants to learn. So like Ian said, I I was in school from the age of 5 into the age of 33 straight. I went straight, to preschool. I went to, elementary, middle, high school, college, master's, doctorate, straight through. And so I value education. Now, I will say that I don't necessarily know if my doctorate was something I was interested in. And in fact, I changed my trajectory about a year into my doctorate because I kept digging into education, and I'm like, I'm digging into education, but is this my long-term vision? And I didn't know what my vision really was at the time. I just knew that that didn't feel like the long-term one. So halfway through, I changed. While it is a doctorate in education, my focus is on leadership, transformational leadership. And transformation is something that's like really passionate to me, like something that I prioritize, something that I like love, and something that I feel like now I take the transformative tool. That's like one of my pillars in my business. I take the transformation piece and weave that into my business. So when I think about how my education has played a role into my entrepreneurial journey is the transformation piece. I do a lot of work around like trauma informed care, and then my own journey of continuing to learn. So because even though I am out of traditional and formal schooling, I am still constantly learning and building on my craft even to this day.
Okay. Uh, Tell me about transformational leadership. What does that entail?
Yeah, so it's away from the leadership of like, so okay, so if you think of like servant leadership is where you become a servant to in turn be able to become a leader. So you're humble enough to know that you don't know everything, so you're willing to serve to also be able to have an impact as a leader. Transformational leadership is the same kind of concept, but it essentially focuses on like, how do you transform the team, how do you transform that person from the inside out, how do you find their skills and help them to leverage it, how do you help them to transform to really step into that next level version of themselves. So it's about leadership, but it's about transforming that person or the team to be able to be an effective leader.
Interesting. So, like, what in your experience do you think is like one of the biggest missteps of a leader, or that keeps them from being like transformative in
Yeah,
nature?
that's easy. Thinking they know it all, and more importantly, um, thinking that they don't need help. Yeah,
Gotcha.
yeah,
Yeah, I can attest to that as a leader myself. You got to keep educating yourself, otherwise it's gonna become stagnant, and it's gonna ooze on down to the people that depend on you for guidance, and then before you know it, it's a complete mess.
you got it. You
Dope.
got
Okay. Cool. So tell me, you are one thing I admire about you, apart from just like everything, how decorated a woman you are.
Thank you.
Um, no problem. It's the truth. But one thing I appreciate about you is your consistency, especially when it comes to pushing out content. Tell me a little bit about your content strategy and how you use it to, draw an awareness and for your business, and also ultimately speak to like the conversion piece of converting like that brand awareness into leads in
Yeah.
business.
Wow, that's such a like a loaded question. So one, the way I look at content is like we all like I read a statistic a couple years ago that said the average American wastes 2.09 hours specifically a day. And I remember that blowing me away and me starting to really pay attention to like where my time suckers were, like where am I spending time that I probably don't need to. And I realized a big part of that was scrolling social media, right? So most of us scroll social media like seem like mindlessly. And even recently I've noticed that I've kind of picked that habit back up a little bit. But I started to be more intentional. I'm like, if I'm going to scroll social media, I'm going to scroll social media with things that educate me, that fill my bucket. And I'm going to scroll social media with the intention of like, what are the things catching my eye and how can I like replicate that into my own business? So when I first started to think of my content strategy, I started to pay attention to like design, like what are colors and schemes that really like really speak to me. And that's how I started to tune into my design. Then I got really structured about who I follow on social media, like because energy is everything. So who you're allowing in your energetic space is big. So I started to be really cognizant of the type of people I'm following, the type of things that they're pushing out. And it's not even people that are in like the same field as me, just people with really encouraging pieces. And then so from there, I feel like my social media is actually really encouraging and really enlightening instead of like time sucking or like soul sucking. So with that said, what I started to do is I started to create when I got creative ideas, when things started to drop in my spirit, when people would ask me questions, when I learned something new, that kind of thing. And I started to create, and I created from that place. And then I am the queen. I actually have an entire training on this, but I am the queen of repurposing. Like I will take a piece of content, I will take a blog that I wrote. Oh, this is a perfect example. So every single Saturday, I record a YouTube video. From that YouTube video, I strip the audio and I make it a podcast. From that podcast, I strip that audio and I make it into a blog. Obviously, I edit it and whatever. And then from there, I take that blog and I can make that blog into up to 5 posts. So literally from one recording. Now, that entire process could take me up to an hour and a half, hour sometimes, depending on how long it is. But I've perfected it. But it doesn't take me days on end. I can create multiple things. And then here's the amazing part. Thank God for Facebook and memories on this day. Sometimes things will pop up from the year before and I'll say, oh my gosh, that was such a dope piece of content. What would,
Share.
yep, share, or what would this year's version of Nicolyas say? What would I add to that? And then I take it
Right.
and purpose and add a little bit of extra to it, you know. Actually, one of my books, really cool fact, make your message your masterpiece. That book is actually based on a training that I did, a 60-minute training I did. I stripped that audio and then I went way in depth because obviously I'm like, people are paying for this book and they want more insight, and I went way more in depth, and that's one of my best sold books. And so I'm queen of repurposing. Now, to answer the next question, I actually just did a story about this morning, and this blows me away every time. But with content, this is the tricky part. Like sometimes you'll make a piece of content and you're like, that's fire. And then you get like 7 likes and you're like, okay, so no one cared, right? And then I made a reel the other day that I literally did not edit, did not write anything on. You can see me like touching the camera. I breathe funny. Like there was no editing involved, and I accidentally hit send instead of putting it in my drafts. And something told me like, just leave it. Like I was just tired. It was early Saturday morning. I'm like, forget it. And that reel got 5,000, 4,000 likes within the first 2 hours. And I'm like, okay. And I didn't even mean to send it. Right. So that's the weird thing about content. But what I have learned is, oh, were you going to say something?
No, I was just going to add that it's incredible how people don't respond to air quotes smart content, like where you really put in the time and effort, and they respond well to more like guerrilla style content, like you just shot something quick on your phone and you tossed it out there and it just went.
Yep.
Hmm.
It blows me. And it happens all the time to me. Happens all the time. That's why I've like stopped buying into this idea that I need to spend hours upon hours on content. But with that said, today I had a lady who reached out to me and told me how she was like binging my content on YouTube. And then she came over to my Instagram and she just told me how she was like so lit up by me. And I also had a second lady who signed with me about a month ago. And she told me that she had been watching me from a distance. And here's the crazy part. Both of these women, neither of them engaged with anything. They've never liked anything. They've never popped in my DMs until today and a month ago. They've never shared anything. Like I wouldn't even have known they were followers. They weren't someone I knew. And so that's what I've learned about content is that like people are watching even when you don't know that they're watching, and they're paying attention even when you don't know that they're paying attention. And I think the best thing for me in the space and the work that I do is that consistency is key, because it shows that like, how can I tell someone that I'm going to show up for them and support them if I don't even show up for my own vision and my own goals? Like there's no way to be able to prove that. But because I say it with my words, but I show it with my actions, people come in and they have this insane level of like trust. And that trust is huge because then they're willing to commit to that next step when they trust you. And so for me, content I feel like has been one of my greatest forms of conversion. Because even like my email or my email list, I email once a month in the beginning of the month with a monthly newsletter, lets you know what's new my way, lets you know what wins my clients are having, and let you know how to work with me. And then I email once a week on Wednesdays with just something motivational and encouraging. And my open rate is not always amazing, but I'm telling you, like each month I get someone that's like, I love your newsletters. They light me up. Like I thought about giving up and then I read this letter. It was like perfectly on time. And so I keep doing it. And because I've had enough of those one-off experiences where I'm like, yeah, it matters. It matters. And it's a gentle reminder that like your dream and your vision is so much bigger than what meets the eye, and it's so much bigger than you.
Yeah. So how are you capturing that data though? Like specifically for the newsletter? Is this is a selfish question, by the way, because I've considered actually starting a newsletter for this thing, just again to like, because what you're doing with the consistency is yeah, you're building trust with the audience as you're building the audience, but you're also probing and penetrating the algorithm. You know,
Yep.
so the more you're out there, the more share of the conversation you have in the respective space that you are. So like, how are you capturing that to like actually have like a mailing list,
Yeah,
if you
so
don't?
I have it's so crazy. You are like so in rapport and sync today. So I have a program that I love. It's called Active Campaign. And it is an amazing like mailer system. And there's a lot of other ones. Like there's MailChimp, which is a great one that you can start off with for free. And I used it forever. But then when my email list grew, I knew I needed to move to something a little bit more robust. There's, ConvertKit, there's a million others, but I love Active Campaign, and it tracks like open rates. And when I say it's robust, there's like a point where like if people click certain things, I can do what's called tag them. So let's say, every time I send out a newsletter, I reference the elevate method at the end, and someone clicks the elevate method. Now they're in a different funnel that I know that they have shown some level of interest in it, and they can get a different series of emails than a person that maybe is just reading the newsletter, which is also different than the person who might click things to know about book writing, right? So now it's helped me to kind of segment my list to know where people are interested. And I love that. And the reason I say it's funny that you ask is because I've been so part of my growth this year has been really exciting, but really scary for me. And this is part of leadership that I think people don't talk about, is like where you start to hand things off to other people, because I can't do it all. Like I literally can't. And so right now I have an amazing team behind me, a team of 3 women that have been helping me structure and come up with an idea to bring all of my systems together. And I found this great program, but I'm really nervous to move over to it because they don't have such a robust email list. And I'm like,
Hmm.
it would make sense for my courses, my membership, my email, everything to be in one place. But then it's scary because it's kind of like going to Walmart. Like you can get lotion at Walmart, but is it as good as the lotion they have at Bath and Body Works? Like that's what Bath and Body Works is known for. So I'm in this place of having to make some of those big business decisions. But essentially, Active Campaign, I love it. I have been using it. I used MailChimp for 1 year and I loved it. It was a great starter, but I knew I needed something. I was looking at long-term vision as I was growing, and Active Campaign has been like my best friend.
Hmm. Yeah, we'll keep at it. One of my favorite quotes these days is fear is an incompetent teacher.
Mm, mm.
So,
I can't love
so
that. Yes.
so so feel it, but put it in its place and keep on
Feel,
pushing.
do it anyway. Feel the fear and do it anyway.
Hmm. Absolutely. What's that? What is that one quote? I think it's on your Facebook page about. It's like a correlation between growth and comfort. I can't remember the exact phrasing of it though.
Probably, who knows? I say quote. That's another thing I love is quotes. I probably say it so much, but
Yeah,
um,
you, yeah,
probably
you,
can't even think off the top of my head.
yeah, you say so many wonderful things. So we talked about the business and like kind of like on a high level what you did to kind of stand it up. Now, I think a very integral part of this is branding. Once you get things going, and you've spent a ton of time and maybe a little bit of money on your branding. So, can you tell me like about I guess like just your branding process. I know you've gotten like professional help recently with your branding and everything, all the way down to just like photography, what color palettes you want to use, the font, and and all of your content and everything, and just kind of like framing up what the people see to make what you do a little more palatable and obviously attractive. So can you speak to that a little bit?
Yes, I would love to. So this is probably one of my greatest lessons in business. This was early on in my business. I had a lady who wanted to work with me. She said she did. And she's like, well, I just want to see your website. I want to make sure you're real. And I did not have a website. And I was like, oh my God, oh my God. I was like, oh, it's actually getting revamped. And she's like, okay, I can wait. How much longer? And I was like, a week. I don't know why I said this, right? And I'm like, oh my gosh, I got a week to like make a website. So I tried for a week to Google and YouTube University my way. I'm a very resourceful person, right? But I am not creative in that regards or tech friendly. So I tried to Google and YouTube University my way to creating a website. Okay, long story short, the website was trash. It was ugly. Things weren't talking to each other. Like it was a mess. So I tried to like still show her the website. She obviously clearly decided not to move forward. She probably was like, "This lady's a mess." I was looking back to this, but I knew in that moment like I didn't want to get on another sales call with somebody and not have my stuff in order. So I hired this guy to help me make a website, and he had a thing called 1 week website where he'd get your website up in essentially 5 days. And I I wish I could go back and talk to my younger self, but I was so in this like rush that I didn't really understand what came into like building a website. I didn't understand what branding meant. I didn't understand any of that. So I just kind of let him pick colors that I never really was in agreement with. So the colors at the time were gold, turquoise, and this like bright fuchsia pink. And I like turquoise, I like pink, and I like gold, but I just didn't like them together. It felt really childish. But I dug my heels into that website for in fact, I dug my heels into that website until November of this past, like 6 months ago. And, and as I started to elevate and change my brand and make it more like luxe and more aligned with what I really wanted all along, I just didn't know how to explain that. I decided to bring on a branding coach. And like when I tell you I scrapped the entire thing, and it's funny because if you look at my Instagram, I still have my old branding up there because it's motivational to me. It's still that beginning stage. It's still very raw and real, and
Yeah,
it's still like such a testament to the work that I put in.
yeah.
But I scrapped it all. I scrapped it all. And I did a lot of research around what colors speak to audience. I did a lot of research around fonts and how fonts pair together. I did a lot of research around my demographics and what I wanted to share. And while it required so much time and a crap ton of money, when I tell you that might have been one of the best investments I've ever made in my business. Like I've never felt like more aligned in my brand. And I think when I did that, it helped me to show up in a different way as well and attract a different level of like clientele.
Excellent. Yeah. Um, yeah. I always, I've said this before, like it's always painful to me, like when I see like friends who are entrepreneurs that like have like haven't quite made that branding journey yet, and they undermarket themselves into obscurity, because like just sharing a flyer just ain't gonna get it, like that's people can ignore a flyer. So like I know I personally put a lot of thought and effort into like the rebrand for this podcast, and the one major thing for me was color, because I could never figure out like, okay, what's really my color, like what speaks to like what I am and what I do, but also like what's going to catch the naked eye. And I eventually settled on the plum color palette, because you don't see a lot of plum or purple a ton in social media. It also just happens to be my daughter's favorite color right now, and
Oh,
yeah. So it's always, I've always appreciated purple, but I don't see many people doing purple. So now that I've made my little makeshift logo that I made on Canva, I just made sure it had that really pronounced purple, so that when you're scrolling, and you see like a comment I drop under one of your posts, like that's no sympathy for kings on Instagram. That's no sympathy for kings on YouTube. It's just like
I
simple.
know that every time I
Yeah.
see it, I'm like, oh, that's Ian. Like I know that off the top of my, and that's what branding is.
Hmm.
When you
Yeah.
see See the red circle, you see the red Target with the little circle with the dot, you know that's Target. If you see a yellow M, you know it's McDonald's. That's what branding is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's been really helpful, but it's really important for people to do that research and really think about just like what we call consumer touch points. I'm a marketer, so I speak in marketing slang a lot of the time, in corporate slang. But yeah, you got to think about those consumer touch points. While we're on the subject of consumer touch points, let's talk about the customer experience when they come to Dr. Nicolya looking for assistance in writing a book or standing up their coaching business. Like, what does that look like? From the time they find you to the time they tap on your link tree and see everything that you're into, and to getting a session with you and all that. Like, what does that look like? What can people expect when they engage with you?
So my business is unique in the sense that like I have two kind of different lanes, if that makes sense. I have the book writing lane, I have the coaching lane. And the way that that came about is I told you guys a story about how I got into book writing. I published that book, people started asking me, and then I started to coach people around writing books. As I started to coach people around writing books, what ended up happening is I was running into people that were like blocked, and they were like, well, I can't share this story because I'm not healed, or am I ready, or I'm getting in my own way. So I started to do a lot of healing work, and then in doing that healing work, I started to study like neurolinguistic programming, which is all about mindset, hypnotherapy, things like that. And then that's how my coaching business was essentially birthed. And it was a cool transition because at the time I had about 4 clients in my book writing program that wanted to take a book and like leverage it to build a brand. So they moved over into my coaching certification program. So it was this like beautiful transition, but my business is still kind of distinct because sometimes I have people that only come in through the coaching space or only come in through the book writing. So for people that come in through book writing, how that works is I have a free master class. People typically watch my master class, and then they're like, "Oh my gosh, this is amazing! I'm ready to work with you." And then they join my program. We have an online accountability and support group, and amazing things over there. With the Elevate method, it's a little bit different because I do more of a live touch point because the program has a lot of live components. So with the Elevate method, people can either join like a live master class that I may have, or sometimes I have a challenge. Right now I have what is your standout coaching strategy quiz, which helps you to understand like how to leverage your standout tools to be an amazing coach. And then from there, they show that they're interested in coaching. And then I send them to fill out an application. And what the application does is it really gauges who says that they want to do it, but who's actually going to show up for their vision. Because one, the Elevate is a significant investment, but not just a significant investment in price, it's a significant investment in time. And it's a significant investment of stepping out of your comfort zone. And this may be the quote you were thinking of, but like there is no growth in your comfort zone, right? There's nothing there. There's nothing that's going to
You
serve
got
you
it.
comfort zone. So the Elevate method, what makes it so transformational is that you do the work yourself first, you live it, you embody it, and then you teach it to other people. So you're essentially creating this amazing ripple effect that starts with you. So in the Elevate method, you fill out an application. I have a co-trainer and an assistant. My co-trainer, her name's Siobhan, she's amazing, and then my assistant, her name's Marlene, and then me. And so once they fill out their application, the 3 of us sit down, we review the application to see if it feels like a good next step. And there's some things that make it pretty obvious, and some things that I'm like, yeah, it's not really a good fit. And then after that, we jump on a sales call, if we feel like it's a good next step, and then they join inside the program. So like the Elevate method is there's a little bit more steps just because of the significant time investment and significant financial investment.
Gotcha. Uh, I don't I don't know if I specifically asked you this early on, but what is the Elevate method?
Yay, I love that question. You're right. I don't know why I thought you asked that. Um, so the Elevate method is an unparalleled coaching certification program. And I literally don't say that lightly. It is a program that I put my blood, sweat, and tears figuratively into creating because what I found, as I said earlier, I'm a lifelong learner. I want to learn. But the coaching space is unregulated. So there's a lot of people that step into the coaching space with great intentions, but have no clue what they're doing. And they assume that it's like talk therapy, like people get on the phone, pay them to get on the phone, and they vent about their problems. But coaching is so much deeper than that. So I started to work on my own certification. And what I found is that people were like certification factories because people want to say they're certified to be able to stand out in the market. So all these, programs, and you'll see them on like ads, you'll see them on like Udemy, things like that, where it's like $7 and you can say you're a coach, that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
So I was running in all these programs and I'm like, I don't want my program to be like that. Like I don't. So the Elevate method is unparalleled in the sense that it's built on three pillars: the coaching, the community, and the certification. So you're in the Elevate method, you're receiving seven certifications. You become certified in my proprietary process, which is Elevate. And it's an acronym, and I kind of break down that process. We have neurolinguistic programming, which is all about the programs and the patterns of your mind. Hypnotherapy, which is not like what you think about when you think of like, running around butt naked or barking like a dog or what you see on
Hmm.
stage. Hypnotherapy. It's like a guided form, a deeper form of meditation is what you said it was. I love that.
Yep.
Um, we
Yeah.
have,
For pause real quick. For
yep,
those of you that don't know, Nicolya and I did like a whole video on this like a year or so ago, when we discussed my hypnotherapy experience with her. That's something I'll have to repurpose in the near future. Get it up as like a classic cigar talk, on the classic cigar talk playlist. But continue. I just wanted to toss that out there, as
yeah,
it was an enlightening experience. I reflect on it fondly.
that would be awesome to repurpose that. Okay, so I have Elevate, NLP, hypnotherapy, life and success coaching, which is growing to be like a $325 billion industry expected by like 2025 or something crazy. Emotional freedom techniques, which is like my all-time favorite tool. It's a tapping technique that helps you to balance your energy. Human design, which is like astrology on steroids, and then a technique called time techniques, which helps you. If you think of your emotions and your experiences like a pearl sequence, when you have a traumatic experience, it creates like a hold on you, and we essentially break that pearl sequence so that it doesn't impact you the way it has been moving forward. So those are the seven certifications. In addition to that, you're getting coaching. So I am not a certification factory where I'm throwing these certifications at you, telling you to figure it out. But we have coaching inside the program. So you are getting opportunities to practice the modalities. You're getting opportunities to experience the modalities, like tons of coaching and support so that when you show up as a coach, you're confident. And then we have the community. And this might be one of my favorite parts. But when I created it, I'm like, I want like-minded people. Research says you are an average of the top 5 people you spend the most amount of time with. And I want people that don't talk about their vision. They show up for their vision. They care about their vision. They're lit up for their vision. They want to create a massive ripple effect in this world. And they know it starts with them, like all of these things. And so I have been so fortunate to craft this amazing program where these women inside this program support each other deeply. I had a client who published her podcast. I had a client who got her first client. All this happened in the last week, and everyone's like sharing on each other's wins and like telling other people about it. Like there's no competition. It's just so supportive. And so it's essentially a coaching certification program, but it is unlike any coaching certification program that I've seen out there.
Excellent. Uh, Break from this. How many books have you published so far?
You got it. You 11.
11. Okay. All right. Cool, 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 cool. Jeez. And she doesn't think she's a great writer.
It's so funny when I say that. People are like, "What?" I'm like, maybe
Hmm.
it always feels like work to me. I think great writers make it feel easy, but one day I'll get there.
Okay. Yeah. I think you're kind of there. What you've accomplished is just like a massive undertaking, for any for any person, no matter where they are in life. And the one thing that you can't lose sight of is the importance of the work-life balance. Um, Knowing when to turn the work off and perform those self-care acts, and also tend to all those other different pesky aspects of life that we just have to tend to. Like, what are some of, like, I guess your most I guess your favorite work-life balance mechanisms, if you will, to keep you kind of grounded and level.
So my all-time favorite one is I call it my 3D system: delete, delegate, and do. So when you think of your schedule. And I challenge any of you to participate in this. So you could either look at your schedule for the last week if you're already a person that kind of writes it. If you're not, I challenge you to write your schedule over the next like 3 to 5 days and then come back and listen to this part. But when you look at your schedule, there's three different areas. Like when you look at how you're spending your time at your schedule, but how you're spending your time. So there are things on your calendar that don't need to be there that totally could be deleted, right? There's things on your calendar that only you can do and nobody else can do. And then there's things that you can delegate or ask for support with. So I'll use today, for example. Today, I really wanted to watch this show that I missed yesterday and I really want to catch up on it, but I knew today was like a crazy busy day. So that was deleted off of my day, right? I knew that I can't ask my trainer to come in and do this live for me, right? She can't answer the questions for me, right? You needed me here, so only I could do this live. Delegate. My daughter also had track practice at the exact same time of us meeting, and so I asked one of her track friends moms, like, hey, can I take them tomorrow if you take her today? And we coordinated that. But like that's really important to me because I recognize that I am only one person. And I shared with you guys earlier that website experience. I forgot to say my favorite part. Like, you know, you can't do it all, and it's okay to not be Superman or Superwoman and to ask for help when you need it. Like asking for help is actually a sign of strength. And so I had to learn that a lot in business. And I'm now incorporated it into my life in general when I work to create ways that I can delegate things that can't be on my plate, when I prioritize the things that only I can do, and I work to be honest with myself about saying what things don't belong on my calendar to begin with.
Yeah, I had to learn that one the hard way myself. Just how much power there is in delegation.
Oh my gosh.
Like I don't need to be the one to do everything.
It's hard to swallow that pill. And I told like I learned it a hard way too with my website, because I'm like, I'm over here trying to save money and I'm wasting time. Like I wasted so much time doing that and then still end up spending money in the long run. So it didn't
Yeah.
save anything. It caused me a headache.
hmm Yeah. It's still hard for me to be honest because
Mhm.
it's always that little pesky devil on my shoulder that's like, they won't do it the way you'll do
You'll
it
do
to
it.
a T.
Yes. Oh, that is
Uh, And it's just like at some point you have to accept that. Like you could coach them as best you can, but you're gonna have to accept that like they're not gonna do it exactly the way you do it. They may not do it up to the same standards of you. And, they may do it better. You never know once they're coaching to the right place. But some of that stuff you just gotta start letting it go. It's like I remember there was a point in
hard.
my career where it was driving me nuts. And I was spread so thin and working all sorts of crazy odd hours. And then like I had to have mentors come to me like, well, you got people that work under you. Like, why don't you start giving some of that away? Like, get
Yeah.
that up off you. You know? Yeah, there's a lot of power in delegation. So if you're in a position to delegate it. Like, I'm.
And we all could be in a position to some extent. Like it
Mhm.
doesn't have to be something big. My 13-year-old has been asking to cook more. Cooking is not something that I'm passionate about. And so I've delegated that to her. Like if you like cooking and that's your task, do it. Go ahead.
Right.
Run wild
Go
with it.
for it. Hmm Absolutely. No, it's very liberating, but it is a tough pill to swallow, and it's hard to let some of those things go,
Yeah.
especially when it's something that you are passionate about. But definitely looking forward to getting an intern for this podcast one of these days.
Oh, that'd
So
be
that'll be a good day. So tell me what's next for you.
So, I would love to essentially take the Elevate method to the next level. So, with that is a coaching certification program. But then once you're done with certification, what I would love, I really, really, really want to, I want to create a mastermind around it, like an elevated, like master's version, where it's just like that next level part of it. I don't know. I don't know. I don't really know I haven't felt the entire idea out. If you know anything about human design, I'm a manifester, which means
Oh,
that
only what you've told me.
okay. So there's 5 different types in human design. I'll make it quick, and they all have different strengths. So like generators are action takers. They're people that take action, and you can find your human design chart if you go to myhumandesign.com, I think, and you just type in your date of birth, your state and city, and your time of birth. You got to know your time of birth. That really makes a big difference. So that can be hard for people that don't know their time of birth, but there's a lot of ways you can like test, pendulum test, all these things, whatever. But if you know your time of birth, you know your state, your city, all that stuff. I check it out. But So generators is one type. You're the action portion of the collective. Like you can take action. You have a lot of like renewable energy. There's manifesting generators, which also are similar to generators, and then they have a lot of energy, and they also come up with new ideas. There's projectors who hold a crap ton of wisdom. My brother's a projector, and when I learned that, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's why he was a baby genius all this time. So there's all these different things, and there's reflectors and manifestors. But I'm a manifester, and manifestors are supposed to initiate new things. They're supposed to be fire starters, and it's so funny because I always feel weird. Like I remember telling my family about my dream of entrepreneurship, and I did it not in a bad way. They did it from a place of grace, but they wanted to talk me out of it because it didn't feel safe. It felt crazy. It felt like just do what you're already doing, you know? And it's so funny. Ever since I started it, my mom and my brother, and they all call me and they're like asking me questions about it. And I didn't understand that journey, right? But I'm supposed to be a fire starter. With that said, I have this idea of a mastermind and I haven't really felt it all the way out. I just know that I want it to be like so dope and so different. I just got to feel out like what that part looks like.
Gotcha. Awesome. All right. This is wonderful. Before we let you go, tell the people where they can find you.
Sure. I would love, first off, again, thank you so much, Ian, for having me. It always is such a pleasure to be on here and to talk to you. And you're such a good question asker. I feel like I could talk forever. But I would love to be able to connect with you guys as well, even beyond No Sympathy for Kings. So you can find me across the board at Nicolya Williams. I'm on YouTube, I'm on Facebook, and I'm on Instagram. And I have a podcast as well, the Dr. Nicolya Show. So I'd love to be able to connect with you all.
And Elevate has its own Instagram handle too, I believe. Yes.
It does, but I actually got kicked out of it. So we'll make it work.
Oh, well, never mind. Social media is so funny. Okay. Well, thank you so much again, for being so gracious with your time and your insight. It's always a pleasure. You're my hands down my most frequent collaborator since I set out to do this journey in media. So, I gleefully tout that every time we connect. All right, my good people. As always, if you've made it to this point in the video, by all means, if you haven't already, put a like on that video. If you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel, hit that little button right down there that says subscribe so you can see more content like this if you found this content beneficial. And, and if you love this conversation, why not share it on your social media, get it out there. And be sure to follow me everywhere. No Sympathy for Kings on Instagram, Facebook. I have a TikTok channel. I'm also on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and pretty much anywhere else you can find podcasts. Anywhere you look for me, I'm probably there. So, as always, my good people, a lack of discipline may cost you your kingdom. No Sympathy for Kings. Take care.